Well, Occidental College professor, political science professor, Caroline Heldman joins us this morning to take a closer look at the memo and what's in it and what isn't.
Good morning, Amy.
Good morning.
So as your package noted, this is a very partisan issue. What is in the memo? Well, allegations that the Steele dossier, which Christopher Steele put together, which was originally funded by a conservative organization and later funded by the DNC, was the basis for getting surveillance wiretapping on Carter Page. And Page is someone who's been a person of interest since 2013, well before any of this happened, because he admitted he admitted providing evidence to some folks who later ended up being Russian spies, one of whom did time in a federal penitentiary, two others who fled to Moscow. So he's been a person of interest for a long time. But what's at stake here is a FISA application that was extended in 2016. So Republicans are alleging in the Nunes Memo that it was based on the Steele dossier, which is a political document. There is nothing in itself about that that is good for the FBI. However, Democrats are saying that it's misleading because even though that might have been part of the basis, the question is whether or not that information was corroborated from other sources. And in fact, the Democrats are saying that it was. And if that is the case, this is a nothing burger. But at the end of the day, we actually don't know because there isn't enough information to know whether or not there are breaches or biases in the FBI. But what we do know is that 4 different federal judges who were appointed by Republicans signed off on this.
And Republicans feel that what's in the memo actually helps President Trump, but does it really help?
Well, if he's looking to shut down the Mueller investigation, this is not his smoking gun. Mueller was appointed many months after the first FISA warrant was extended in late 2016. So this actually does not implicate Mueller in any way. In fact, Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, has said as much. He said, look, it doesn't actually diminish the status of Rosenstein or Mueller. So it can't be the basis for the firing of either of them, according to Republicans in Trump's own party.
But some Republicans say that this is a sign that the Russian investigation should end. I mean, is there any chance that it will end now?
Well, it can't end on the basis of this. This is a controversy that started before the election. Mueller is appointed 3 months later. Mueller is not implicated in this in any way. And what we did find out from this memo, oddly enough, it confirmed that it was Papadopoulos who accidentally spilled the beans to an Australian intelligence person who then initiated the Russian investigation. So it didn't come from Carter Page. So the memo actually confirms that the source had nothing to do with Carter Page. So in that sense, this shouldn't in any way affect the Mueller investigation unless, you know, folks are engaging in pure partisan politics.
Yeah, but some say that this is actually going to give the president the reason that he needed to actually fire Robert Mueller. Do you think that this could actually happen? Well,
if he uses this as reasoning, it's very flimsy, and I think that members of his own party would have a big issue with it. Trey Gowdy, as I mentioned, Paul Ryan have said, look, it doesn't implicate Mueller in this at all. Lindsey Graham, perhaps most pointedly, has said, and he is a Republican senator, he has said that if Donald Trump fires Robert Mueller, that will be the end of his presidency. So I think that Trump needs to be very concerned both about putting Carter Page's name in the paper again, because there are real concerns here that Democrats and Republicans alike have about his connections to Russia, both from 2013 as well as his meeting, his trip to Russia in 2016. But Trump also needs to be concerned about the impropriety or the appearance of impropriety of firing somebody who is investigating you. If there's nothing there, why is there so much pressure and intention in shutting down this investigation? Just let it run its course. This is how government works. Just let these people do their jobs.
And the firing wouldn't necessarily end the investigation.
It would not end the investigation. In fact, somebody could, another person could be appointed in order to investigate him, and this could drag out up until the 2020 election. I think it's a little short-sighted for Trump to be trying to throw out distractions and attempting to shut down the Mueller investigation when indeed there's really nothing he can do to shut this investigation down if indeed the 2 indictments and the 2 plea deals which have come forth so far indicate that there might be something there.
All right, Caroline, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We certainly appreciate it.
Thank you, Amy.